My name is Tracy McPherson, Habitat Omaha's Advocacy and Public Affairs Director, as well as the interim CEO of the organization at this time. In just a few moments, I will introduce our featured guests and get this conversation started. But first, I just want to tell you a little bit about our Cost of Home Conversation series. Habitat Omaha's Cost of Home Conversations is a series of conversations with elected officials, community leaders, and experts in a variety of fields. You'll meet one of those experts this evening. The purpose of the conversation is to provide an advocacy forum where we can openly discuss the benefits and some of the barriers to home ownership and access to capital for all. I have a couple of quick announcements before we get started. First, we are going to record the conversation. This event will be recorded and posted at a later date for those who could not attend today, or if you'd like to share with a friend. We ask that you engage with us by asking your questions in the chat window. This allows us to move along quickly and to answer as many questions as possible this evening. Again, I encourage everyone to ask questions throughout this program, and we'll do our very best to get through all of them. And now, I'd like to introduce our featured guest. With us tonight is Angel Starks. Angel is a real estate agent and chief experience officer for Team Locale with Nebraska Realty. Angel is also a Habitat Omaha board member. Welcome and thank you for being here this evening.
My absolute pleasure. Thank you for allowing me to be here.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, home ownership is something that I love talking about. And so to be at this virtual table with everyone is really an honor. So thank you.
Yeah. So Angel, the first question is, this is a crazy market. What's happening in this market? And it's not just Omaha, but it looks like property values have escalated across the country. Can you explain to us what's happening in this market and what's causing the hike?
Okay, definitely. There's all sorts of things that are occurring right now. And you can actually go to the next slide a little bit. And there's these three things that are really affecting what is happening here. Our lack of inventory. And what does that mean? There are not enough existing homes for the number of individuals looking to buy. And there's a lack of inventory for a lot of reasons. Many people are buying homes and using them as investment properties. So there's rentals and so forth. But a lot of people are also using them as Airbnbs or short-term rentals. So the usage of the inventory or the housing availability that we have is not always for sale and home ownership purposes. Another thing that's happening in our market right now is our increased interest rates. Interest rates are increasing, I feel, on a weekly basis. And just the trend of them going upward is encouraging or discouraging people to continue, because you really have to pay attention to what you are able to afford and what that really looks like for homeownership, and being able to understand all the pieces, because we want you to stay on top of payments and enjoy your home. When you're in your home, we want you to enjoy your home, and being able to afford all the amenities that it comes with is a part of enjoying your home. But then also we've seen over the past few years, especially due to the pandemic and so forth, the increased costs of construction. So there's a lot of developers who are building homes, and we want them to be affordably priced, but because the cost is so high, they have to at least make something back on the homes that they're building. So there's lots of different things in the overall general market that affects the way we experience home ownership on our individual side. So,
you know what? All of these three things are out of the control of the consumer.
Right.
Even at Habitat, we've seen the cost of construction materials rise as high as 44%.
Right.
So if we're feeling it, we know other developers and builders are feeling it as well.
Right.
So
exactly.
With all those elements in mind, what should people do? What can they do?
Okay. I think there's a next slide here. So I just want to talk about what the trends of yesterday, and I put that specifically because I feel that the market, there's a slight shift right now of what was happening just yesterday versus what's happening today. And that's loose. So I might mean last week, it might be a different home, but these are some of the trends that you might see from home to home, right? Depending on price point, location, condition, all of those types of things. But escalation clauses, and escalation clauses when you promise to pay up to a certain amount that's over the purchase price. So a house is listed for $200,000. You say, I will pay $200,000 up to $215,000. So it gives a set amount that you were willing to pay up to above any other bidder. So if it's in a competitive offer situation, a competing offer situation, they're willing to increase their bid up to a certain price. Well,
how often do you see that? Out of curiosity, I'm sorry. How often do you see that where people are having to bid above the asking price?
Every offer that I've written for the past year or so. Yeah, it has become very much the trend. I'll talk about it on the next slide, but they just look different, right? So now that escalation clauses have become a part of the Omaha markets or greater Omaha markets norm, I don't think they'll ever go away, because they're just a way for you to say, I'm willing to pay more than someone else. And it's just a competitive edge. It's just a tactic, right? But just knowing what that tactic is how you utilize it for your own self. That makes sense. Okay. Another part is people are encouraging, because they are going over the asking price or of a home, to fill in that amount of money called an appraisal gap, because you normally don't get money from a lender and more than what the house is valued at. So if you're willing to pay more than what the house is valued at, there is a gap of what you get for an appraisal amount and what actually you're willing to pay for market rate. And so back to our example of $200,000, if the house values at $200,000, but you offered $215,000, there's a possible appraisal gap of $15,000. And that actually has to be paid in cash, because you aren't able to get a loan for that, because the mortgage loan is for the actual value of the home, not what you're willing to pay for the house.
Are you finding that's becoming more common?
Yes, that is more common. Yes. Now, does it have to be a $15,000 gap? No. But we'll talk about this a little bit later when I talk about buying power and what that looks like for you and how to figure out the best way to navigate through what your buying power is and define what that is. Nice. Another way is inspections. Now, everyone usually has a right to an inspection before you buy a home. I highly encourage them, because when you buy a house, you want to make sure that not only does the seller have a legal responsibility to tell you all that they know on the seller property disclosures, and that's a part of the contract that you actually sign and go with it. It's a legal document that goes with your contract, but you also are able to pay for a home inspection on your own, for someone to come in for 3 to 4 hours, check all the mechanics, the electrical, everything, the plumbing, run all the water, all the things that you don't think to do before you move into a house. And they don't do everything perfectly or catch every little tidbit. They will look for all the big things. Well, unfortunately, the trend has become buyers are willing to forego that. They're willing to say, it's okay, I'll buy this house without a home inspection, which is not the best idea, because you never know what kind of condition your home is in. And then you move in and a week later and you say, oh, this pipe is leaking, right? Or we didn't know this was going on. So it's important for us to be able to navigate what that looks like. But the trends of yesterday is that people are saying, it's okay, we don't need a home inspection, I'll buy the house as is. Or I'll get it for informational purposes only, meaning I'll buy the house no matter what. I just want to be informed of everything that's broken, but I'll still buy the house. And that's because people feel the need to compete against other individuals because of the lack of inventory. Another trend that has happened or has been occurring is buyers are willing to pay for the seller's closing costs. Now, traditionally, a seller will pay for the buyer's closing costs, but people are saying, hey, how can I get creative? How can I get the seller to pick my offer over other people? How about I pay some of your closing costs? What does that really include? your title insurances, any closing fees, commissions for if they're working with realtors, and all of those types of things, or
Is there an
repairs.
average, is there an average cost? I want to give people an idea when we talk about
Mhm.
closing costs. How much money are we talking about?
Oh, so it all depends on the offer, right? It all
Right.
depends on the price point because there's a percentage of all of that. But it's really up to you, right? So if you say I'll pay $1,000 towards someone's seller's closing costs, $1,000 is better than nothing, right?
Right,
Or you
right.
might say I'll pay $2,000. It really comes down to your buying power. It's your buying power and understanding how to best utilize your money. Mhm. So that's
Nice.
where you would lean on a realtor because they would know how to utilize that money for you. Mhm.
Excellent.
Mhm. Another one is buyer pay home warranty. Sometimes buyers will ask a seller to pay for a home warranty, and buyers are saying, I got it. I'll pay for my own home warranty. See, you should pick me because I could have asked for this, but I didn't, you know?
Right,
So
right.
it's all about packaging. And then, of course, we have an uptick of cash buyers. And that means they are paying full cash for all of the entire home, which takes away the requirement to have an appraisal. And that just seems very attractive to sellers because they can close in such a short time. So those are some of the trends of what's happening of yesterday.
And the type of things first time buyers are competing with.
Yes, these are the types of trends that first time home buyers are competing with. That is absolutely right. Mhm. Now, as a catch up, these are some of the things that are happening as of today. Home inspections are actually coming back, which I'm super excited about. So now individuals are asking for home inspections and sellers are saying, okay, because there's a little bit more inventory to choose from. I can't say that it's a buyer's market because that would be not true. It just, there's a little bit more normalization and availability. I will also say for escalation clauses, now a house may be listed for 200,000. We might offer 195 with an escalation clause up to 200,000. So offering under the price, but escalating up to make sure you're still competitive because now we are offering under the price because sellers have gotten really comfortable, really comfortable with the overpricing a home. And then buyers are being a little bit more picky and able to say, hey, I know you listed this at 200,000, but I really only want to pay 195. And sellers are going, okay, I'll take it.
Angel, what is that? Can you break that down for us a little bit? When you say
Mhm.
escalating price up to 200, does that mean if a bid comes in at 197, your real estate agent automatically knows, let's go 198 without
So
having to
in the
call you and
contract, yep, in the contract, you would write, I am offering $195,000 with the escalation clause of $1,000 above the highest bid up to 200,000. So if someone bids 197, you're going to pay 198. If you decide to go by 500, they offer 197, you're 197.5, right?
okay.
Or you can go 5,000 by $5,000 and you can say 195 and someone says 210 or whatever, they say 200, then if you go up high enough, you could say 205, right? But it all just depends on the individual buying power and what you're able to do.
Okay. All right.
So then that means you're seeing less appraisal gaps because they are actually getting bids accepted underneath the purchase, the asking price of the list price of a home. And then also they're throwing out the seller's closing costs because they're already getting a good deal, right? So things are intertwining. That's why it's really good to have a professional that knows the market for that area that you're looking for and all of those types of things, because then you can compete better than most. Now, cash buyers are still a thing, and that will always be an issue. But you're also able to negotiate a little bit more, which is great. And we're seeing that. Will that stick around forever? I don't know. Never, but forever. But I mean, forever, will that stick around for another month? We don't know. We just follow the trends of the market.
Wow.
Are there any questions thus far?
We don't have
Oh,
comments from the attendees, but I have a question. With the cash buyers like that, competing in this market, a lot of times they'll swoop in and you might see them buy 60 houses at a time.
Yeah.
Out of state investors. Can a family compete with that? Are there ways that families can compete with that?
So every seller is not the same. And you can sometimes read a seller by the way they present their home. If there is a house that has been lived in by a family and they still have all their things there, they still live there, more than likely you can have a personal appeal for that person, right? They don't necessarily just care about the bottom dollar, how much they're getting back. Whereas if it's a seller that has bought a home and flipped it, they're only looking at it as an investment, right? I've had sellers say, hey, we're not selling to any corporations, we're only selling to people. And we can't really go into familial status and all of those other specifics because those are protected classes under fair housing.
Right.
But people can kind of perceive an offer on whether or not this person is looking to live there or not, you know?
Okay.
And the seller gets the opportunity to choose. Well, if there's houses that were affordable and people are flipping them or they've been vacant and now they're moving, the motivation changes. And so that is the important part to understand. That's why we build relationships as realtors to better understand what they're looking for, you know, and that's what we go after. So sometimes you can win over a cash offer. Sometimes it's not the highest price. Sometimes you can, knowing what you want and being confident and having great financial background and working with lenders that are helpful, then you can compete. Now, if everybody had a backing of a financial backing of a cash buyer, we would just be great. But not everybody has that.
Do you know how Omaha compares to the rest of the nation as far as affordability?
I can say that there is an affordable housing crisis across our country.
Right.
Mostly because houses have increased so much and there's that lack of inventory everywhere. But there's a lot of disinvested communities and dilapidated properties that if people had enough money to fix them up, we probably have a lot more, or those vacant lots, you know, those types of things. I do think our real estate market is healthy. It is just that the lack of inventory continues to increase the pricing of homes. So a home that a home has probably increased in price maybe $20,000 to $30,000 just within the last year or two.
That's amazing.
So if someone says, "Oh, I should have bought last year," you're right. Oh, I should have bought the year before. You're right.
Yeah. So I got excited.
I got question.
I got excited and told my husband, "Oh my God, now's the time to sell. We should sell." And he says, "Where would we go?" I said, "Oh, you're right."
Well, so that's the first thing I ask my clients who want to sell their home, like, okay, what's next for you? Yeah. But here's the thing about that. And someone says, Angel, is it a good time to buy? Yes, it's a good time to buy. You know why? Because in 2 years, the houses are still going to increase in price, right?
Yep.
It's not one of those bubbles where everything will crash, right? They will stabilize and normalize, but it's not because people are underqualified. They're just overextended, right? So before, people were getting loans that they shouldn't have gotten because they were just the process of getting a loan was not structured. And there was incentive for people to get the loan, but not necessarily have qualified them very well for them. Whereas people are getting qualified well, now they're just overextending themselves because they're using all of their cash. And then if something were to happen to the home, they wouldn't have the cash to be able to fix the maintenance and to maintain.
It gets risky because I do think that some, especially with first-time home buyers, they don't always think about the cash reserve needed in case you do have to make a repair.
Yeah,
that's an important thing. It's, you know, there's no landlord to call to say something's going on with my sink, but you have to take care of that and maintain.
Or even an insurance claim, you still have a deductible, and depending on what that deductible is, you still have to make sure you have enough cash in order to move forward with that as well, you know?
Right. Here's a question. Is it a good idea to go about is it a good idea to approach a current homeowner about purchasing their home, even if it's not for sale? And if so, what's the best way to approach the owner?
Well, you see those beautiful signs everywhere. We buy homes. Or you get 5 or 6 mailers in the mail that says somebody wants to buy your home, right? So everybody does it. It's just called cold calling, right? Or acquisitions. A lot of times people are willing to sell, they just don't have a plan, or they don't want to go through the process of getting the house prepared and all of those types of things. So, but people sell and buy houses all the time, right? And then they call and say, hey, we really don't want to list this home, but we want our agent to be able to do the paperwork for us and to make sure it's all legal and facilitate over those types of things. But a lot of relationships just happen. I sell at least 4 or 5 homes that people have said, my neighbor wants to buy my home. Can you help me? Yeah, we can. Or I want to sell my home, but there's this neighbor down the street that needs a bigger home and they're interested in our home. Can you do the paperwork for us to be able to get this taken care of? I'm like, of course we can, you know?
And that's exactly how we did our home probably about 12 years ago. It was a for sale by owner, but we still hired a real estate agent to make sure all the paperwork was properly gathered. And making sure the clear title, that's another thing that people don't think about. So he handled all of that paperwork for us, and I was very grateful for that.
Yes, yeah. So there's ways
that.
around it. Yeah. And sometimes it's in the communities that you're in that what's going on with your neighbors, or you hear of certain things and says, oh, sounds like they're retiring, going out of state. Maybe that's an opportunity for me to see if I qualify to buy their home, Nice. Or they're retiring, or sometimes someone has passed away, and seeing those opportunities, it never hurts, because sometimes people need help or want to be saved from their mortgages or need someone to take care of the home. So having the question and the confidence to be able to say, there's this house that I'm interested in, Angel, will you go and figure it out? Like, who owns this? Can we have a deal or something or another? And it's like, oh, okay, let's figure it out. Never hurts to ask.
I know some first-time buyers who've been in the market for quite a while looking for a home. Is there an average length of time right now for buyers to acquire their new home?
So I will say that the trend right now is for most buyers to get what we call a conventional loan. A conventional loan is not a government-backed loan, so it can happen a little bit quicker. So then from start to finish of a accepted contract is about 30 days.
What about looking for the home, though? I'm saying, like, people who are looking on the open market,
it's taking a minute. Depends, right? So everybody is different. You might want 2 bedrooms, you might want 3 bedrooms, you might want 5 bedrooms, you might want 3 bathrooms, you might want a big backyard, you might want not be on a busy street. There's all sorts of criteria of what you're looking for. I will say that I've worked with the person right now buying their first home in Omaha. We've been looking for 6 months. Not that any of the homes that we've seen couldn't have worked. It just didn't work for them, right? So it has to be able, and I always tell people, I am not buying this home. You are buying this home. You have to live in this home. I do not. I love every house that I go in because I don't have to take care of it. And I don't have to walk up and down the stairs to go to the restroom, or I don't have to, sleep in the bedroom that's over the garage, or whatever the case may be, right? There's so many different factors. But we've had individuals look for homes for a week and bought the one that they wanted. So it really just depends on the individual and how well educated they are in their needs.
Okay. We have another question here. What does the home buying qualifying process look like?
Oh, great question. So this is the best thing that you can do for yourself, and go talk with a lender and get pre-qualified, because they will run your credit, they will look at your income, they will look at your debt, and they will give you an idea of how much you actually can afford, and then what you choose to afford for housing. So they will go through all of the loan packages that you qualify for, how much payment you would like in a housing payment, all of the financials. Now, generally, and I might forget something, you need 2 paycheck stubs, 2 months of bank statements, 2 years of tax returns, and then any like a savings account or where you might have cash. So just or any other debts that you might have, just because they want to make sure they get a clear picture of your finances, of what should apply and what shouldn't. And then they'll give you a price. And then every house that we go to, we generally go off of that number to make sure that it's still in the bracket of comfort for you when you actually own the home. Because taxes will change depending on the areas and the home, right? Your insurance is something that you get to pick, so that would change depending on you and your background, right? Of where certain things are, if you've had a relationship in the past, or if you have car, or if you have, all of those different discounts that you have. They can only make sure that they know what your mortgage payment is going to be. And then there's other factors to go along with it. So starting a relationship with a loan officer, whether that's at a credit union, a bank, at a mortgage broker, or whatever program that you're looking to go through, that's one of the best things that you can do for yourself, because it doesn't mean you have to buy a house. It means that you've qualified yourself for a house, and that means that you are mentally and financially prepared to go and take the next steps if you want to.
Awesome.
Great
Is there
question.
a minimum credit score?
Ooh, so I think this one changes a little bit. And since I'm not a loan officer, I can't confirm, but I feel like there are some programs out there that probably go under a 640, but 640 is probably a pretty safe bet of where to at least have.
So the goal for especially first-time home buyers is a 640 or higher.
Yes.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
That totally makes sense. So what is the one thing you would recommend to any home buyer looking for a piece of property right now? Like one thing, if nothing else, what would you recommend?
Actually, I think it's the next slide.
All right, nice segue.
I think so. Yeah. Great job. I think this is the number one thing. If you are looking to shop for a property right now, you must know how to identify your buying power. As a realtor of 11 years, well, this is my 11th year. Once we know what buyers can afford, and not just how much they get approved for a loan, but how much cash they have, then we're able to compete and to better represent them in what they need to do. Now, you need cash for your down payment, and that is a percentage of the purchase price, right? That's cash. With closing costs, there is a $7,000 to $8,000 opportunity for you to buy, for you to pay your own buyer's closing costs. What does that include, Angel? The lender charges fees, the title company charges fees. Then you have to pay prepaid taxes and insurance, and they call those escrows. So your escrows even have to be collected ahead of time and put into an account, just in case there's a default, because the bank pays those things for you, right? So you have to have closing costs. And then what if you get an inspection? An inspection costs $400 to $600, give or take, right? So you need to have all of this money up front in order for you to pay or be competitive in the offer. And then just saying, oh, Angel, I really want this house. I want to give a $5,000 appraisal gap. That's $5,000 above that, all the rest of that money. So save. And then once you've saved some money, come check us out and say, okay, let's save a little more, or whatever that might look like, right? But knowing your buying power will make you so much more confident in moving forward, because then you won't have to second guess, or we won't have to then say, are you sure? Are you okay with this? Because again, I don't buy the house. You buy the house, and we want to see you happy in the house that you buy. So understanding your buying power is one of the best things that you can do for yourself in this market.
That's fantastic. And down the road, we do have some removing financial barriers session planned, and to help people figure out, well, man, I don't make a whole lot of money. How can I manage to save enough for a down payment? We're going to have some sessions on that as well. So it's nice for people to do this, right?
Yes. I mean, and it's not a sprint, it's a marathon, right? Is that the same? Exactly. Right? Yeah. It takes time. Your milestones are different than other people's milestones. And against realtor opinion, not everyone wants to buy, and that's okay. Yeah. I've had people sell their homes and go rent so that they can save money and then go buy again, right? Or that they can get the money that they want from their home. So you never know. If you ever have that gut feeling that this is of interest for you and you want to have a conversation, ask. Don't hold it in, because then you're like, oh, it was really just that easy. I didn't know. And we would love to show what that looks like for you. But it can be very intimidating. But there are awesome programs out there that are able to assist first-time home buyers, like NIFA. And there's even a Home Buyers Assistance Foundation at the National Realtors or the Nebraska Realtors level that gives back $250 for first-time home buyers within a certain purchase price bracket, right? So we're rooting for you. We want everybody to buy their first home. We just also want you to stay and enjoy your first home as well.
Yeah, we want you to be a successful
Mhm,
homeowner for sure.
mhm, mhm,
You know, with the market the way it is right now,
mhm.
is there anything that you would tell people it's okay to make a little sacrifice because it's such a hot market? And then on the other side of that, Angel, is there anything that you would say is a non-negotiable? Hot market or not, don't sacrifice this.
So there's a couple of things. It really just depends on you. So one of the interview questions that we have when we meet with new clients, I go, so who's in your circle? Do you have a handyman? Do you have an electrician? Do you have a plumber? Is your dad one of those people that builds decks? Are you that person that likes to put up walls? You know, do you have family members that are willing to assist you in doing certain things? Because then that helps us gauge your sweat equity into a home, right? And sweat equity is not always cheaper, but a different way of going into a home, right? And because not everybody wants to put sweat equity into their home. But what are you willing to do, give or take, right? So again, it really just depends on the individual. I am not a fan of not doing home inspections. I think home inspections are very important. But a lot of sellers are also doing pre-inspections. So if they're doing a pre-inspection before they list, I can understand why you wouldn't choose to have a home inspection. But also that's leaning on their service and not your own. I mean, everything else under the legality stage of it, I don't know. It's just so individualized that it really, there's no blanket answer for that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you think
I do not want you to settle though. So it's not just like, oh, take the first house that we see. I want it. There you go. I really would not do that unless you really thought about it hard and that the first house you saw actually makes all the sense. Then it's like, go for it. Let's do it. Come on, let's make it. But one of our fiduciary duties is obedience. So even if you go into the first house and I'm just like, you need to go see some other things. If you say go, we go. So.
Okay. That's kind of a nice segue into my next question, because I want to know that, you know, people have in their mind what that dream home looks like, where it's located. You know, they have a checklist, and sometimes the budget always doesn't meet everything on the checklist.
Right.
It just doesn't. And
Right.
that's for all of us. We all have had to sacrifice a thing or
I'm
two.
a dreamer. I'm always dreaming about my next home. Always.
Me too.
I've seen so many. I have such a crazy checklist. And the only way that this entity would even occur is if I built it myself, right? I've seen so many cool things in so many different houses. I just want to pick and choose all of these things. So I doubt that anybody has that vision for me, right? So I'm always looking. I love it.
Well, so my question is there anything that you would recommend people sacrifice or think twice about, or maybe they could add that down the road? Okay. What about their dream? If they can't afford the dream location,
yes,
should they open up their mind a little bit?
Yeah.
Maybe this is just as nice of a neighborhood.
Yeah, well, and I think people get stuck on location, and then I go, I think it's a really good idea if we can just go a little bit outside of this boundary, and bam, they get it, right? Yeah. Just a 2-minute extra drive, and you got it, right? So always be reasonable in your location, unless there's a very high reason for not wanting to be. But location is something that you can be flexible on. Having an updated bathroom or kitchen, right? Those are things that you can do over time. Maybe the house doesn't have all hardwood floors. That is something that you can put laminate in later, or maybe the carpet's not the color that you want it to be. You can change carpet out. We always say cosmetics change. You can change anything cosmetic. You don't like the countertop? Wait till one of those granites go on sale and swap that out, right? You can change the paint colors. It doesn't have to be move-in ready in every aspect of your move-in readiness, right?
Right.
Or it's more of the structural things, right? If you absolutely do not like an open concept, yes, you can build some walls, but it will be much more expensive than painting, right? Or the foreseeable, like had people put in egress windows and, different things like that over time, or maybe it doesn't have the faucet and the sink that you want. All of those things are cosmetic. Those all change.
Right. And we've been in our house for 12 years, and we
Mhm,
just put in our dream kitchen.
mhm,
And I will tell you, had we been able to afford to do that when we first moved here, it would have looked totally different.
mhm,
I'm so glad we lived in the house for a
mhm,
number of years
mhm,
before we did that big remodeling project, because we knew how we lived,
mhm,
how we entertained in this house. And
mhm,
the kitchen
mhm.
just looks different than if
Yeah.
we would have done it as,
Mhm,
first year here.
mhm.
So some things I think are worth waiting for.
Or people say they want a completely finished basement, or they don't want wood paneling, or they don't want this. All cosmetic,
Yeah, yeah.
all cosmetic. And
Okay.
structural gets a little interesting. So we do say generally you can have any house you want. You just come to pay for it. You want to knock down a wall, you have to pay for it, right?
Yeah, yeah.
You want to add in double sinks, you just got to pay for it. Or
And
you want to water a rainforest shower, have
yeah.
it.
And
Yes.
I would tell you also, first time buyers also who love historical homes, we
Mhm,
have a lot of neighborhoods that have
mhm,
some really beautiful
mhm,
historic homes. So it's
mhm,
not just one neighborhood with
mhm,
historical homes. We have a
mhm,
lot of neighborhoods that have
mhm.
that old world charm. So again,
Everywhere.
be
Mhm,
open-minded.
mhm.
Yeah, be
And
open.
know that homes and communities shift. So if you actually are a forward thinker, you could probably get something above the curve, and before all the rest of the trend catches up for that neighborhood.
Isn't
I'm
that
just thinking
true?
of like neighborhoods like Walnut Hill. It's a little hidden gem. There's some beautiful homes over there, but it's not hustle and bustling right now. But
Oh
in
my
the years
gosh.
to come, I think it will be. And for you to go in there now, it would be completely different in 5 years.
Yeah. Well, also, I remember 10 years ago what Blackstone looked like.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And nobody, well, I shouldn't
Mm-hmm.
say nobody,
Mm-hmm.
but it wasn't this hot district that it is now.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
very good advice as far as
Yeah.
thinking about
Mm-hmm.
those hidden gems,
Mm-hmm.
yeah,
And
that have yet to
community
be discovered.
development and planning for sure.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Love it, love it.
Mm-hmm.
So what
Yeah.
do you see, Angel, as one of the most common barriers for home buyers, besides the market conditions? What's one of the biggest barriers that you see blocking buyers from landing their first house?
If I'm being completely honest, debt.
Mm.
Because you are qualified and approved according to your debt to income ratio. And so the more debt you have versus your income, it holds you back from being able to get as much. So somebody says, oh, I make this amount of money, I should be able to afford this much house. Well, your debt actually has to combine that too, because they're not going to give you a loan when you have more debt than you have income. So we want to make sure we're catching that and being conscious. Now, will that take you away from being disqualify you from buying a house? Most definitely not. That's why a loan officer knows what emphasis to put on certain things and what you can do. And a good loan officer will create a plan with you and be communicative and talk you through that. But debt is hard. And then the lack of inventory is a huge one. And
Mm.
then mindset. Some people don't believe that they should be homeowners because it's
Mm.
not something that they've seen, or is they're not deserving of. And you are, if you choose to be. That is absolutely your right and your
Mm.
ability to own a home. And it should be something that everybody reaches for if they want to. Mhm. And
Absolutely.
community. There's so many things,
Oh,
so
there's
many,
so,
so
so,
many
so.
factors.
There's
But
so,
that's why
so.
you should talk about it and think through it, because some people can be so fearful that they don't try. Mhm.
Mm.
Mhm.
So you mentioned Walnut Hill being kind of a hidden gem. Is
Mhm.
there I was going to ask you, is there a particular area in town that people are overlooking that maybe they shouldn't?
Well, it all depends on people, right? I
Mhm.
love homes east of 52nd Street, on the north or south side of the city. I think there's just some amenities that I am attracted to. I like the sound of traffic, and I love to see people walking, and I like to see the urban feel and be amongst the urban feel of our city. Some people don't like that. Some
Mhm.
people might want to live on a countryside and have an acre of land around them. Doesn't make them any more, any less. It's just all on preference, right?
Mhm.
But again, back to your question or your comment on location, just be willing to explore some different areas and what's to come and what programming is there for you to be able to get that dream of yours. I
Mhm.
mean, I Blue Stem is a wonderful area, and I think all the areas around that 52nd Street corridor, it will be fantastic. I mean, I love Omaha though, Greater Omaha, and I think I can envision myself living anywhere, right? Um, but it really comes down to preference of, so many other factors, how big your family is, and what does your day-to-day look like? Where do you work? Are you in school? There's so many different factors, but be open to everywhere, I
Yeah.
say.
And I
Mhm,
like walkability too.
mhm,
I love being in a
mhm,
neighborhood where we can walk and get ice cream or
mhm,
walk
mhm,
and have breakfast or dinner.
mhm,
So I'm totally
mhm.
with you on that.
Yeah,
Totally with you.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I
All
love the
right.
people.
So somebody's found their dream home. It's in their price range.
Mhm,
What should they do in this hot market to seal the deal? What do
mhm.
you, and you've given us some great steps, but let's say, what are the top two things that they just have to do in order to make sure they seal the deal?
I have a realtor because our relationships prove worthy, especially
Mhm.
someone that's been in the business enough or at least connected enough, because there is preference there too. Somebody that knows they're going to get the job done and to the table, because there's so many different negotiation points that could be an entire another conversation of
Mhm.
what you negotiate within a contract itself. And then understanding your buying power. That's a really big one. Now, let's talk a little bit about what we call the love letters, right? This is the
Mm.
letter that you would
Yep.
put with the offer. Usually that kind of just like, oh, I love your home. Oh, I can't see myself without it. All of those types of things.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, that was one of my favorite things to do in the past. But our legislation, our real estate commission in Nebraska actually ruled those not to be legal for us to present, right?
Oh, I did
As a
not know
realtor,
that.
I can't read or I can't present it with the offer. So now it has to come from the buyer. And so we have creative ways to make that happen, because we're always looking to make that personal touch and compel to people in that personal way, to
Mhm.
go over the top. So we have our tactics.
I did not know that a real estate agent cannot submit the love
Well, they have to
letter
be really
with the
careful now,
offer.
because if it mentions any of their protected classes, like if it talks about my wife and two kids or anything like that, that's a protected class and it gets into a fair housing
Oh,
issue. Mhm,
okay. That makes
mhm,
sense now that you say that. Oh,
mhm,
that's interesting. I did not know
mhm,
that. Wow.
mhm, mhm, mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah, so it's good.
yeah,
Yeah.
it is.
But we have different tactics that we do, and we really try to pull into our
Mhm.
networks to be able to find something. Um, but just try. If there's ever an inkling, you always try. Just go for it. You always go for it, because somebody else is feeling the same way. And so you just do
Mhm.
it. Yeah.
What is one of the most creative things you've seen in this market of people doing to try to acquire and win the bid? And I'm sure
Um,
there's a
yeah,
list.
there's a whole bunch of tactics. I can't give everything away, but um, I would say, because we can't deliver those love letters, we have the buyer go and drop off a personalized offer, right? So
Mm.
then they can do whatever they want because we didn't see it,
Yeah, yeah.
you
Oh,
know.
wow. That's
Mhm,
smart.
mhm,
Yeah.
mhm,
Okay. I love the creativity because you
mhm,
have to be now.
mhm.
It's a tough
Yeah,
market for
it's
buyers.
always moving, so we're always being creative. We're
Yeah.
creating yeah. Mhm,
Fantastic. All
mhm,
right.
yeah.
Is there any information that we haven't touched base on that you'd like to make sure first time buyers know or
I think make sure you know your buying power and how much cash on hand you have. That's really help, or any resources that you have. That's really going to help you the most.
Mhm.
I was hoping that anybody would ask more questions because it will really just lean on people's knowledge. I can talk up here about a million things, but if it's not something that actually applies, then you know. So if there's anyone that has questions, please make sure you ask them, even if it's a clarifying question. But we say that a person is ready, willing, and able, right? That's ready to move, ready emotionally and mentally to separate themselves from where they are to a new place. They're willing to do so. That means they're willing to show up, do the work, power through the paperwork, be present in all of those things, and financially able to be able to then sign on the dotted line and say, I am approved for this, and when people feel like they are ready, willing, and able, then that helps. And don't limit yourself. Don't think just because you want to buy a house, it will happen in 30 days. Not so. It's a process. And so we're willing to stick with you for that. So in order for you to move on, wherever that may be, and get educated, and we're with you for the rest of the time, as long as you're here, we're there.
let's see. First, for a first-time home buyer looking at getting a $150,000 home, what is a good number to have saved up? 10,000,
Um,
5,000?
mhm. So I'm just going to do a little bit of math here. So 150,000, we're going to assume that they're doing a 3% down payment, okay? So I'm gonna put the calculation in the chat box. So $150,000 with the 3% down payment, that's about 4,500, right? So 4,500, and then you will have your closing costs. So your closing costs are your taxes, your lender and title fees. So I would say roughly another $5,000 to $6,000 for that, right? So that puts you already at $10,000. And then if you were to do like a home inspection or whatnot, then let's just say another 600. So with that, we're already at about $11,000, $11,100. That's just for the basics of what we are. But NIFA allows you to get a loan, right? And you have a readiness program at Habitat, right? So I don't know all the loan parameters for that,
Right.
but they have an opportunity to help you with those closing costs and those big chunk, so that you can have an opportunity to pay that back at a smaller rate over a process of time, or sometimes those are forgiven, right? And so it really just depends on all of those things. And normal conventional loan is 5%. So it's a little bit more than that. So I would say if you could save up some cash from 10 to 15,000, but NIFA even says, even if you have $1,000 down, they could help you navigate through the rest of the closing costs.
That's fantastic. And there are also, I'm thinking of one particular credit union that you can set up an IDA, individual development account. They will match dollar for dollar. For every dollar you save, they'll match $1 in that account to help you get toward home ownership. And again, we are going to be focusing on some of those, helping people to remove some of those barriers and letting them know about such programs so that people can take advantage of them.
I agree.
Yeah.
Yes.
Excellent. Excellent.
Great question. Yeah, great question.
Anything else that you can think of, Angel, as we wrap up? And I encourage people, if you have any, do not be shy about asking questions.
Please
we have the expert here. She's awesome. This is the time for you to get your questions answered.
For sure.
Even if you're on the fence about homeownership, you don't know if it's for you or not, please ask the question. This is the time.
Well, on the next slide, and homeownership and going through this process seems very, very personalized. And so, if you ever want to just meet and have a conversation about your information personally, one of the best things you could do is just have a personal consultation, right? Be it with that realtor and or your lender, and then having those conversations to say, what am I looking for? Am I ready? Am I willing to do this? Am I able to do this? Answer all those questions. I have people that I've worked with for years that year one, they weren't ready. They were willing, they just weren't ready, right? And then year two, they go, okay, Angel, I've done all the things and I'm ready to go. And I'm like, hey, let's do this. We're ready to celebrate, right? But all the while, the market is changing. So then, there might be a foreclosure or two that comes up that makes you a little bit more competitive. So just keeping in contact with the professionals that are here to help you is the best thing that you could do. And just offer up a conversation to see when you're ready. And I know Habitat does a great job at that.
Yeah.
Mhm,
One more really quick question. We have
mhm,
about 4 minutes or so. You
mhm,
mentioned foreclosure. Can
mhm.
people still find a foreclosure on the market? And
Uh,
is that still saving the same type of money that you used to could save on a foreclosure?
so yes and no.
Mhm.
Um, Foreclosures have been non-existent for some time just because people are getting conventional loans, and usually a lot of the foreclosures were FHA, and they just put them on there. So I think there was two in the state the last time I saw. But are they happening? Yes, but not at a very high rate yet, unfortunately. So some people will probably be in year 3 or 5 before they go into foreclosure, only because there was so many COVID programming that allowed people to go in and defer their payments in a healthy manner, that then they were able to catch up or whatnot. So if those types of programs stop, then we will see a uprise of foreclosed
Mm.
homes.
Yeah, we want people to keep their homes.
We want people to
Um,
keep their homes. So I
yeah,
don't want you
people.
to wait around for someone to foreclose in their home.
No, no,
That's
we don't
not
want
what we
that.
want.
We do
Yeah.
not want that. We
Mm-mm.
do have, as I mentioned, we are going to have more conversations like this with
Mm-hmm.
experts in our community. We do
Mm-hmm.
have an opportunity. We're going to put a link in the chat. If you
Mm-hmm.
want to provide us with your name and your email, we'll make sure that we keep you informed when we do these type of things. We want to make sure that, yeah, that everybody gets good information. And like you said, Angel, it's knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
Not knowledge isn't power. Applied knowledge is power.
Oh, I
So
like it.
we want you to have the knowledge and to be able to apply it to
Yes.
really move your homeownership journey forward.
Yes. Yes. That's
Mhm.
exactly right.
Yeah.
And verifying what you know, and not just going off of what you think you know. Ask those questions and make sure it's clear and understanding. Because if you saw, whoo, I don't have $11,000. Well, do you really need $11,000? Is that something that you specifically need? Possibly not.
Right.
So you want to make sure that you're encouraging what your situation is and not hiding behind a blanket of what generalizations are, because there's something that's meant for you that will occur.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Angel, this has been awesome. Thank you so much
Oh,
for joining us
good.
this evening. We so
Yay.
appreciate it. We'd love to keep the door open and invite you back to have another conversation about
Of
real
course.
estate.
Of
It's a hot
course.
topic right now, lots to
Of
be discussed
course.
about it. And I
Yes.
know that we'll have another group of people who will have more questions. And even the folks that were here tonight, they'll let it marinate.
Mhm.
They'll go, the minute we hang up from this, they'll say, I wish I
Mhm.
had asked. So
Yes.
giving them an
Yes.
opportunity to come back, hear it again, and to be able
Yes.
to ask questions. So,
And reach out. I put my phone number on the screen, my email address on the screen. I lead a team of 9 wonderful agents that are really ready and willing to help out and answer questions. I do seminars and workshops, and of course, I would love another opportunity to present whatever that might look like for Habitat. So I'm
all
excited.
right. Well, we loved having you tonight. Thank you.
Thank you
And
so much for this.
thank everybody for joining us. We do have the link again that's in the chat. Please click the link, give us your name, your
Mhm.
email, and then we can stay in touch with you and let you know when we do such topics and such webinars.
Of course.
Thanks again.
Thank you.
Have a good evening, everyone. And I should give a shout out to Emily and Brittany, who are behind the scenes pushing the buttons, keeping an eye on the chat, and making sure the right links and everything are in there. So thank you, ladies, so
Thank
much
you,
for helping us
Emily
do
and
this.
Brittany.
All right, thank you.